everyone, I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, and this is a Fox News Alert. It's just after sundown in Chicago, where the city is bracing itself for another bloody weekend. Last year, there were 769 murders in the Windy City, the most brutal in 20 years. And this year, the problem is getting even worse. Earlier this week, the situation escalated when gang members opened fire on 2 Chicago police officers, targeting them with a high-powered weapon. Thankfully, both officers are out of the hospital and recovering from their wounds. Cops are actively pursuing all leads, and a manhunt is currently underway for the perpetrators. Joining us now live from Chicago is correspondent Matt Finn. So, Matt, I understand you have some new information and developments about what's being done to turn this situation around.
That's right, Kimberly. 4 of the most powerful city council aldermen here in Chicago say this week's police ambush just goes to show that right now police are outgunned by gang members and drug lords who have the money to get their hands on assault rifles and are ready and willing to kill police. One of the city council aldermen who has seen the crime scene photos from this week's police ambush says the windshield of the undercover van the officers were in was riddled with bullets. The alderman said these 2 officers were literally boxed in by gang members who opened fire with a high-powered gun. Now, these 4 aldermen are banding together, saying police must be equipped with the same firepower they face on the streets in order to survive against gang members who have AR-15s and AK-47s.
That wasn't to shoot at them and say, hey, we're going to show you, we're going to teach you a lesson, stay out of our territory. That was to kill, and to use this. This is not to say, hey, we're just sending a warning shot. This will kill you. This is probably about 2.5 inches. This is a .223 round. So this is the actual round that was shot at these officers and that were in that van.
Now, for some background, here are some stats on what police are up against here in Chicago. In 2015, officers were fired at 18 times. Fortunately, none hit. Last year, in 2016, officers fired at 31 times. 9 officers hit by bullets. And in 2017, so far, officers have been fired at 8 times. And as of Tuesday night, 2 officers were hit. And to follow up on that police ambush on Tuesday night, this is a sensitive case. So far, police have not identified the undercover officers because of the nature of the work they do, and they also have not given a description of the suspects. Kimberly?
All right, Matt, thanks so much for that update. Greg, this is something we've covered on this program a lot in terms of the escalating of violence in Chicago and these criminals turning guns on police officers. A mayor who really is absentee in terms of being able to protect people in Chicago with very little regard, it seems, for public safety.
Well, it's another reminder that, officers are getting shot and being fired at, yet they still move forward. They always run towards the threats that we run away from, and we should always be reminded that they are what separates, civilians from danger. And I think we spent 2 or 3 years watching the media denigrate that idea that the purpose and the protection and the necessity of the police, it was somehow that they were the problem. And so you see a 50% increase in murders in just 1 year, I think from 16 to 15. That's not a surge. It's an explosion. And how does a mayor not resign? A mayor who thought that Chick-fil-A was a threat, so he could stomach murder, but he couldn't stomach chicken. And it's just, I think that there's always, I get the feeling that somehow they've just accepted it because it occurs in certain neighborhoods and not theirs.
Honestly, there's almost, Jesse, like they've become anesthetized to the situation. He has other issues, PC concerns that he is more involved and more animated and invested in, other than public safety and cops' lives mattering and children being protected and communities being safe.
Yeah, the cornerstone of Rahm's murder reduction policy? You know what it is, Juan?
I'm waiting.
Mentors for gangbangers. He wants to give gangbangers mentors to talk to the gangbangers about their problems. Do you think that that's a very strong approach to reducing homicide? I don't. And if he was a Republican mayor, there'd be no way this guy would still have a job. I mean, there's a lot of problems in this city. Racism is one of the problems. You know, they let this happen on the South Side. If it was white-on-white crime or whites were getting killed, I'm sure there'd be more police on the streets. Narcotics is huge there. Heroin, cocaine, and everybody from Illinois and even the surrounding areas come in there to buy the drugs. And there's, you know, a lot of single mothers, and there's no father in the picture, so there are people who are joining gangs in order to, you know, look for what they need to look for. And it's just a tragic shame. And right now it seems like Donald Trump cares more about what's happening in Chicago than Rahm Emanuel and former President Barack Obama.
And has said, in fact, President Trump has, that if we need to, we'll step in if you can't get the job done, Mayor Emanuel. And so far, the grade is a failing one for Rahm. Juan, you've discussed this issue, and part of what Jesse has discussed, which is the role of fathers in households and absentee fathers that we've seen in some of these more impoverished or challenged communities.
Without a doubt, Kimberly, but I do think that this is a separate issue from what I've read. This is about gang activity.
Yes.
And so we have a broader problem in Chicago, and I might add, it's not just Chicago. You can look at Baltimore, Newark, New Orleans, and they actually have higher rates of murder per capita.
What do they have in common mayor-wise, though?
LA, probably.
Oh, you mean Republicans have been through with their free guns for everyone?
No, I'm talking about the mayors of those cities.
Yeah, I was thinking about their free gun policy because
Wait, there's
what
a
I
free
was
gun policy in Chicago? I thought they
have no gun store. They have no gun stores in Chicago, even after the 2014 Supreme Court ruling.
So gun control
But
didn't
now
work.
all the gang members you're talking about now are all running around with AK-47.
Yes, and they talk about burglaries taking place at gun stores in Indiana, out in Illinois. That's a key part of the problem. But
They have a lot of guns in Idaho. And they're
They
not
do.
shooting up police officers in Idaho.
It's a different social context. I don't think the
I agree with
population
that.
of Idaho is similar to the population of Chicago.
Right, there's
It's a
more guns in Idaho.
But it's
But
a dense city.
it's
you know,
a
it's
dense
a
city.
completely different environment.
It's dense in more ways than one.
Well, I don't think so. I think what's dense is sometimes the conversations we have where we want to make the cops into heroes in every case. Tonight, this very night, a police officer in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, has been arrested and charged with murder for shooting a black kid who was trying to go away. The kids were going away in a car. You act as if, well, that didn't happen, but we're concerned
Well, we're not
about
Wait, I
talking
didn't know
about
that.
Acting like that was
And
not
also,
covering
I didn't know, when did this happen? I don't know.
This was a charge just tonight.
That's why we didn't know about it.
I know about it, Greg. I'm on the show.
But
Well,
the point is,
we're talking
let us
about
know and we'll
Chicago.
talk about it.
Right.
I mean, to me,
But you introduced it as though we knew about it, but we chose not to
I
talk
think
about
we
it.
know about it. I don't.
You're
think
saying I knew this story
No,
and
I
I
say
chose
not you personally, but I think we know about it. I think that what you do is, though, in the times that we talk about these issues, we have to talk about it honestly. I think Black Lives Matter, for example, they're a changed group. They're no longer in the streets. They're all of a sudden working to try to build bridges, and I think that's what's
Wait,
important.
wait.
Black Lives Matter's trying to build bridges?
They are.
You missed that, too.
Yeah,
No, that's
where was that
that's
bridge?
what I'm telling.
Is that like the bridge to Alaska?
Oh no,
What's
I'm
that?
telling you something. There have been shootings, such as the one that we're talking about in Dallas, where you don't see Black Lives Matter. This guy Alton, forget he was. There was no charge against the cop in that instance. You don't see any protests. Why? I think there's different
I don't
strategies about
think
helping
what we're
people
talking about
building
here,
bridges
the
with the
violence
police.
in Chicago, which is primarily black on black
Right.
crime,
But
has
this is-
anything to do with police misconduct. If anything, the police in Chicago are probably gun shy because they've been so hung out to dry by the press and by politicians.
They
They're
don't have a
sitting
mayor.
back in
And
their patrol
FBI
cars
wait.
and not hitting the streets
I'm
on
glad
foot
that
patrol.
I'm glad that Jeff
The
Sessions gave me
FBI
some
just
talking
released
points,
a
but that's not
report.
true.
The
I don't
FBI
know
just
what that
released
has
a
to do with
report
what I
that
just said,
supports
Ron.
what Jesse is saying. They said this is a study that was completed looking at. It came out in 2016, and it found that it just became declassified. It was published. It was conducted in 2016. It says that depolicing in the Chicago streets is a major issue, meaning the police officers are making conscious decisions not to proactively
Right.
police in the streets because they feel like they have targets on their back and they're going to get killed. So that's
Which
actually
in
exactly
fact
what's
they
happening.
do, and this is evidenced by this horrific crime here. These officers, they didn't do anything wrong. They were working undercover, some of the most dangerous details to try to protect families and communities so children can feel safe to go to school and come back, and parents can feel safe to go to work. But they do not have the support from a mayor because of his lack of protocol and concern for public safety and support of the police department.
I have a
And
solution.
This is what happens.
A solution is push the crime to areas where all the rich white Democrats live. Legalize drug trafficking in neighborhoods where the mayor lives, and the police just don't go there, let it go, and see how soon that problem will be solved. It's like the reverse of The Wire when they created Amsterdam. Go to Chicago, push it into the rich white Democrat neighbors, because there are parts of Chicago where there isn't any crime, where there aren't any murders, that haven't ever had murders.
Well, so to reground the conversation in Chicago, 760 whatever murders sounds horrific, but Chicago is actually worse when you drill down into the stats. So I want to get this right. One child age 16 or younger is murdered every week. 12 murders this past Father's Day weekend alone. Christmas weekend, 12 murders and 27 shootings. This is all concentrated in 5 police districts.
I just
Five
want to emphasize, though,
districts.
we should not confuse what's going on here in this story, which is gang activity against cops who were working, as Kimberly said, doing
undercover detail.
heroic work, undercover, plainclothes, unmarked car, trying to investigate the murder of a 15-year-old. So they are really doing amazing work.
Yes.
As opposed to what's going on in the broader city of Chicago, where you have a lot of this black-on-black crime, Latino on Latino. Jesse was talking about poor, usually
and
young
why
males.
isn't the mayor doing something about that?
I think
It's
the mayor,
outrageous.
by the way, I think the mayor has been trying, Kimberly, but I don't think there's any magic
He's been
solution.
trying
Not
for many,
doing-
many years and has not been successful.
doing
Juan. I think
enough.
time to try a new mayor.
Well, I think you might be time to say, you know what, we have a dysfunctional culture in a lot of minority communities, especially, Kimberly and I were talking about this before, a lot of fatherless boys falling out of school, no direction, limited economic opportunity, and they somehow think shooting and killing over grudges is normal. This is
Right.
bizarre.
They may-
But Juan, it does tie in because in terms of the gangs, because I saw this because I worked a gang detail as a prosecutor, okay? And what happens is when there aren't any paternal or, father figures in the home, the gangs move into that void to supplant it, to say, we're your family now, we've got
agree.
your back, prove
No,
your
I
loyalty
agree
to
with
us.
that.
And they particularly take advantage of the younger kids and the juveniles to commit the crimes because they go to juvie first in case perhaps not being tried as an adult. And it's a very complicated and prevalent problem. And that's what you see
Same
too
with
with
terrorists.
MS-13, with people coming in, immigrants from other countries, perhaps they're displaced, they don't have the family unit, and they join these gangs. And that's what we're seeing play out on the streets across America. And it's a huge problem.
Well, I just don't think it's all about the gangs. I do think that, as Jesse and I were saying, there are a lot of these broken families,
Right.
or fatherless families, and I think you were going to say even in terms of some of the twisted behavior by people who support terrorist organizations.
Yeah, I mean, the terrorist organizations prey on people in the same manner. That's what I was
That's
gonna
what they
say.
do.
You know, it's interesting
But
parallel.
it leads to other socioeconomic problems as well as joblessness.
The other mistake that politicians make is how they frame the problem. So they always say like gang activity or gang violence as though it's something independent of human behavior, like weather. Oh, you know what? We were seeing a lot of gang activity this weekend. That's how. I mean, that's how they portray it. When in fact, you actually have to look at what are the individuals involved, and then you realize something straight. It's like so they go to other states and break into gun stores. That's actually. Get this, against the law. So it's not like you have a law that allows that to happen. So it's not an argument to say they go somewhere and get their guns, because that is breaking the law. It's against the law. Don't treat it like gang activity. Treat it like breaking the law. That means it's not mainly about the mentoring or I feel for you. It's like you committed a crime. It's this. I don't care if you're in a gang or not.
It's it's personal
And
responsibility
you know what
consequences.
their priorities are right now? They're trying to obscure the Trump insignia on Trump Tower in Chicago. That's what people care about in Chicago, not the gang violence.
All right, we're going to shut that down. All right, coming up, new data shows Trump's tough talk is helping him fulfill a key campaign promise. We're going to tell you which one when the 5 comes right back. Stay with us.
As the 5 reported earlier this week, new data indicates the number of illegal border crossings are going down. But now we can report that new State Department stats show far fewer refugees are coming to the United States since President Trump came into office. In fact, the last 2 months had the fewest refugee entries since 2013. Could it be because President Trump says things like this?
In the United States courts, right now we have investigations going on all over. Hundreds of refugees are under federal investigation for terrorism and related reasons. The best way to keep foreign terrorists, or as some people would say in certain instances, radical Islamic terrorists from attacking our country is to stop them from entering our country in the first place.
So it seems like the president's bully pulpit might be having a pretty significant effect on these refugees coming into the United States. I mean, this happened, on the southern border as well. And now it's happening here. KG, what do you think? This guy really found his voice, and it's having a very big effect.
Yes, it resonated with the American public, and the people that supported him and put him in the White House is something that people care deeply about, I believe. National security, and part of that is secure borders and making sure that we are rigorous and vigilant, although legal, in terms of who we allow in. And there's nothing wrong with vetting properly to make sure that you know exactly who you're dealing with. And now they know that there's somebody in here who's not going to tolerate this, who's not going to let people just walk on in and come in the United States and commit acts of radical jihad. So I think the president is to be credited for this. They are taking him seriously. This is about respect, Jesse, and they know they're not going to get away with it. And as you said, we've seen this mirrored in terms of the southern border with the numbers down in terms of people trying to get in. I love the deterrent effect that he is having. As a former prosecutor, we love that.
Big deterrent effect. And Greg, on the extreme vetting situation, they instituted a new vetting procedure. Apparently, under the Obama administration vetting procedures, you weren't even allowed to look at someone's Facebook page. Now you're allowed to look at their Facebook page, and if they're liking an ISIS video, you can ask them about that.
I think that's a relief. I hope they don't look at my Twitter. Because
you won't be allowed.
There's something that they will evict me. I have to say, when we talk about the border crossings decreasing, it is, in a way, metaphorically, Trump is kind of like the wall by setting up an attitude in which it's going to be harder. However, I refuse to be the prisoner of two ideas. You can be pro-wall, pro-vetting, pro-border enforcement, but incredibly welcoming to refugees. And I think it's very important as an American because you won the geographic lottery. I could have been born there. I could be that guy on that boat, leaving Libya, but I'm not. I am here. So I am for extreme vetting. I am for strong border enforcement, especially in the age of terror and technology where people can come over here and drop a dirty bomb or marry anthrax to a drone. You got to be really careful. But at the same time, some of the best Americans ever are the people who are grateful, the people who risked their lives to get here and who survived and want to make a good life here. So you got to find the good ones, get rid of the bad ones, send them back. I don't mean get rid in a different way. Got to watch your language. But you don't have to be a prisoner of two ideas. You don't have to be anti or pro. You can pick from the best.
Well, it's also important to distinguish between immigrants who, out of choice and free will, would like to come here, and refugees who end up oftentimes stranded on the border here because they're fleeing countries where they're victims of war and terrorism and famine and genocide and all the horrible conditions in the world. And for hundreds of years, that's how part of the reason why we've been able to lead with moral authority in the universe is because we're one of the countries that can afford to and do open our arms to those people. So I think that's part of the distinction, Greg is trying to carve out as well.
So I just want to pick up on what Greg said, because I thought it was so right that you have to make a distinction between people who are coming in illegally and refugees. And right now you have in the U.S. Senate a bipartisan group saying to the Trump administration, explain to us why you have stopped. There has been an absolute pause in terms of the vetting process for people who are legitimate refugees fleeing war, famine, political oppression, coming into the United States.
And who are dying while they're waiting to get here.
I know
one
to
reason.
me, this
I
is
think
crazy.
President Trump loves this country so much that he doesn't want to risk letting in one person that's going to do an American citizen harm.
Let me just say, so many of the people who've done harm are American-born and in the USA, Jesse.
Correct.
Not true. A lot of the recent terrorist incidents are connected to immigrants and refugees as well. About half of them.
How about San Bernardino, where the people were nice enough to throw them a baby shower and welcome them, and they blew them all to pieces? That was charming. Well, that's the fact.
This is not.
But it's also anecdotal. The crime rate amongst legal immigrants in this country is half that of the national average.
Correct.
50%. Chew it over. That's the big fact
Well,
here.
any illegal immigrant that commits one crime is one too many, and that's how I feel about it.
Anybody.
Plenty more ahead as the 5 moves along. A bold prediction about health care from a conservative luminary up ahead.
Hear that music when I'm riding shotgun with Gregory. The Republican health care plan passed the House yesterday, but the left still dreaming about government-funded universal coverage.
We have a failing health care. I shouldn't say this to our great gentleman and my friend from Australia, because you have better health care than we do.
They do have. They have universal health. I know. I thought you would.
Okay. Wait a minute, Chris. All right. The president has just said it. That's great. Let's take a look at the Australian healthcare system. And let's move. Maybe once take a look at the Canadian health system or systems throughout Europe. Thank you, Mr. President. Let us move to a Medicare for all system.
You know, that may sound far-fetched to some of you, but even some conservatives are wondering if free health care for all can be a reality in the USA in the near future.
Historically speaking, we're at the midpoint. We had 7 years of Obamacare, a change in expectations, and I would predict that in less than 7 years we'll be in a single-payer system. I think that's the great irony of this.
Kimberly, this is an interesting moment. You have Charles Krauthammer agreeing with
you?
me? I can't believe it. Anyway, what do you think about this idea that, in fact, even with the vote this week, Republicans have bought into the idea that instead of allowing healthcare to become a free market determinative structure, it should be something that's guaranteed by the government?
Well, I believe they're trying to do the right thing, which is commend President Trump for that, which is to make sure that all Americans are insured. That sounds fair and equitable, but they also want to make sure that Americans are able to have affordable health care, which means you have to have a free market. There must be competition. There must be options so that you can then, in fact, keep the costs down. To me, that makes perfect sense. And that's actually included in phase 2, et cetera, going forward with their plan.
Because I must say, Jesse, that I don't see it.
As the president tweeted.
I don't see it in phase 1. In fact, in phase 1, it indicates that there are about 24 million people that would lose insurance. Premiums would go up. And
Premiums would go up? Was that where would you see that one?
No, it's all over the
newspapers. All over where? All over the mainstream media?
I don't know.
I remember the mainstream media.
How about the congressional budget? How about the congressional budget?
Yeah, the Congressional Budget Office said it was going to be a cheap plan. It ended up costing $1 trillion. So you can take that wherever you want to take it.
Oh, you don't believe in the Congress? Even the senators, Republican senators, were saying it's crazy that Republicans rushed this through without allowing CBO to score it.
You mean when they said you have to pass the health care bill so you can see what's in the health care bill?
Jesse, you're going backwards.
I also
I'm
want
trying
to
to
clear
go
one
forward
thing
here.
up. Well, you're going forward over the edge of a cliff.
I see.
I want to clear one thing up. When the president said your health care system was better, he was talking about the government system. And I would agree. The Australian government system for health care is better than Obamacare because Obamacare is dead. It's in the death spiral. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, because Republicans have tried to sabotage.
Okay, so it's always a Republican fault. I don't want to get lectured by a guy that wasted $1 billion on a website that didn't work. Juan, come on. Be serious about this. You guys couldn't even get a website off the ground.
Gosh.
And this thing
But let me just say
after like a couple years.
What about the fact
Republicans had to save it, Juan?
Let me ask Jillian to jump in here and save me, please, because I need to be resuscitated. I need some Obamacare. Can you tell me?
Oh, then you'll die for a lot of money. Then you're gonna die. Oh my gosh.
So you have
I mean, you do have to just a word in defense of the CBP. I mean, you do
CBO.
kind of. Well, yes,
You
but
can
and the
defend
report.
them too if you want.
Well, they're a bipartisan organization. At a certain point, you do have to trust. You don't have to take them at their word on everything, but you can't make the argument that they're partisan or that they screwed up, so we throw it all out the window. You know, like we have to have some kind of a baseline by which we can measure.
Yeah, you shove it into a machine and then it puts out a number, but it depends what you shove into the machine. I mean, they also say tax cuts aren't going to pay for themselves, but they don't account for economic growth because of the stimulus. What are you laughing?
Voodoo economics, I think, is what
I think
one
you mean
Republican
trickle down.
once called that. Anyway, Greg, let me come to you on this because I'm so interested in this concept that you have people saying, you know, I remember when Donald Trump wrote a book and he said, single payer would be the America we deserve.
I think we've learned from Donald Trump that he says a lot of things that then he doesn't change his mind.
I agree.
And we hear this a lot from people that have a superficial knowledge about healthcare. They'll bring up Canada, they'll bring up the UK, they'll bring up Australia. If everyone has better healthcare than the United States. Why do the people from their countries who can afford it, whether it's politicians or the world leaders or their royalty, come here for their heart transplants and for their health care? Even more, when people talk about Australia and they talk about Canada, remember Australia's only got 23 million people. It's easier to do socialized medicine in a small scale. The same with Canada, which is 10% of our population. It's 35 million people. Size matters when it comes to creating these government bureaucracies. Even in Australia, where you have 23 million people, Australia's spending is out of control. And the reason is because the patients are using the emergency room for minor conditions.
Right.
And there's the solution to the health problem. If we pay for the minor conditions and allow the government to pay for the larger catastrophic stuff, i.e. catastrophic insurance for a couple $100 a year, $400, you actually solve the problem. Even Australia, Australia tried to charge for emergency room visits. I think it was $6 a day. They wouldn't do it because you can't unfree a free thing. Lastly, people always talk about the NHS as some kind of superior process. I live there and I've read about it. The NHS in Europe has some of the worst records for pregnancy treatment, and they have terrible records in terms of dealing with breast cancer and preventive chronic diseases, including stroke. So people love the concept until they're dealing with chronic diseases, and then it's back to the free market.
Single payer is not the answer. We already have government-run health care, and it's called the VA.
Well, I just think there's a big
that
difference between something that cares for all Americans, all the people, and a few rich, sheiks and celebrities.
Well, you can
But
look
I also think that, everybody can't have everything. And in a private system like we have now, a for-profit system, the way I see it, it's binary. You can either reduce costs or you can focus on increasing access to more and better kinds of coverage. I think that a little bit of what the Trump administration is trying to sell right now is a ruse. I don't think you can do both. I hope that they can and they figure something out, but it's not going to happen.
It could be Jesse Economics. Stay right there. Facebook Friday coming up next.
It's Facebook Friday. We answer your questions, and we're going to start now.
That was weird.
I know. I never know what this new thing.
weird.
It
It's
totally unnerves me. From Caleb C. We're going to start with you, Jillian. What's your weirdest pet peeve?
That's easy, Greg.
What?
Unicorns with broken horns.
Oh, you're going after my mug. The problem is, every time I get a new mug, the horn gets broken.
I mean, it's not, is it a horse?
Like my
is it
heart.
a unicorn?
It's a unicorn. That's not your real, what's your real pet peeve?
I was thinking about it in the break. I think my real pet peeve is when you are on the train, which I am all the time, especially going the Northeast Corridor from DC to New York.
Yeah.
And someone, it's a two-seater and someone comes and sits down next to you, but doesn't acknowledge that you're alive.
Wow.
They don't say oh, excuse me, I'm going to sit here, or hi, or... And then they're breathing in your
everybody
face for the next
must
4
say
hours.
hello to Jillian.
Just acknowledge that people
Jillian's
are
looking for
living
some
and
attention
breathing.
on the train.
No, please no.
Be careful what you ask for.
Which for?
Jesse, what is your
Kimberly,
pet
you've had that
peeve?
problem.
You have no idea.
Besides Juan, my pet peeve is probably expense reports, mostly expense reports.
How are those going, by the
Not
way?
well. I have a lot of debt that I have to pay off.
We were discussing
That is actually an injustice that they use on employees so you don't spend as much, and it's always the burden is on you. It's
I know.
incredible.
Yeah,
And
they
American
figured it out.
Express.
Oh, yeah.
Juan?
American
So, I was thinking on one level, when I'm in restaurants and people immediately, if I order a beer, they pour the beer. I don't want them to pour the beer because they always pour the beer badly and there's a big head and all that. I just want to pour the beer slowly at my own pace, but everybody thinks they're being polite. It's almost like Japanese. They're going to pour the beer. The second thing that really bugs me is double parking. I'm trying to get down a busy street. Somebody takes up a whole lane. So selfish.
Sorry.
But the biggest one, this is
Sixth
Jillian.
Avenue is a
Why?
law violator.
I mean, it's
right here.
crazy. But Jillian, this thing on the train,
Therapy.
my problem is people will come and sit down next to you and they start talking on their cell phone. I'm like, good gracious.
Oh, my God.
You should sit in the
Kimberly?
quiet car.
Let's see. Maybe people who sit next to you on a plane, and because they actually happen to be sitting next to you on a plane, they all of a sudden assume they're in a relationship with you. That's a little
The opposite of Jillian.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you have no idea. That's why everyone's like, oh, you had to fly all night. Get any rest? Nope. I mean, I got the eyes popped open, keeping an eye on what's
Don't
going
talk to
on.
her. Talk to her.
Oh, it's like,
You
no,
need an
we're
eye
not going to
patch.
date or go out
My
and get
pet
married
peeve
after this.
is when people criticize me for all my volunteer work. It's like this is stuff I
Oh,
like to
right.
do.
Oh,
And,
come
No,
on.
the only thing that drives me crazy, really drives me crazy, are the people crowding at the gate. You're going to get on the plane. And I understand it's because they're trying to get their bags up. And then the airline says, they always say, it's an extremely packed flight. When is it not an extreme? They always, and then they go, it's an extraordinarily packed flight. And then they go, then they keep adding adjectives. And then all of a sudden it's like, we're going to have to check your bags. We're going to have to check your bags. And it's like, just make up your minds, people. And then that's why all these people have to crowd the front. They're all upset and nervous.
Oh, my God.
And they're wearing
I'm
cargo
getting a
shorts.
vicious flashback
Why?
From
Why?
flying with this guy.
All right, let's go to the next
worst
question.
Flyer ever.
This is, no, I'm getting better, actually. Charney. This is from Charney. Great name.
Uh-huh.
Who, living or dead, does the thought of interviewing send you into a panic? I'll start with you, Kimberly.
Living or the devil. I mean, right?
No, somebody that's real.
Isn't
That was.
he is real. That would be the number one answer on Family Feud, I think, right? Did I get like all the points?
I would, okay.
What?
I would die to interview the devil. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Oh man, imagine that being your first interview on your brand new NBC show.
It'd be your last.
That's better than the Kardashians, I'll tell you that.
Oh my God.
Don't know what you're talking about.
I have no idea what I'm talking about. We're coming up. We have the devil.
Stand down.
The devil is here.
Stand down, little
Yes,
one.
it's a remote. It's a remote from Middle Earth. Very hot. Very hot. It's been a very hot summer. Juan?
Well, I mean, given the week we've had, I guess, given what President Trump had to say about the Civil War, you go back and say, hey, Andrew Jackson, what are you thinking? Yeah, I mean, you were dead, but what were you thinking about that Civil War? Could you have stopped it? Yeah.
Interesting.
Cheap shot, Juan.
What about you, Jesse?
I don't really get panicked ever, so I can't answer that
Except
question.
about expense reports.
Yes, if I have it.
Maybe that's your problem.
The CEO of
Maybe
MS.
some panic might be good once in a while.
He's so relaxed. He's like, hey,
Yeah, I need a panic button.
hey, right.
Nobody, not a single person.
Nothing comes to mind, Greg. I'm sorry. It's the way I was born.
Yeah, there you go. You were born that way.
I was born that way.
There you go. Lady Gaga, just a quote there,
That's
Jillian.
right.
That's a good answer, though.
Right, you'd be
Lady
scared
Gaga.
of Lady Gaga?
You should go with Lady Gaga.
I'll go with Lady
All
Gaga.
right, Jesse says
in the
Lady
meat
Gaga.
dress.
Okay.
Ew.
Yeah.
I thought you liked
What about you,
salami.
Jillian?
I love it, but all that meat going to waste. No,
It's a
Literally.
It's terrible.
It's covering her waist.
It is terrible.
really.
nice one, Greg.
Was it really? Jillian, can you come up with an answer so we can exit this segment?
I'm
We're gonna
going to
be
go
canceled.
with you, because we can do living or dead.
Right. And I'm not sure what I am.
And
Walking.
it would just be a great interview, A, because I could get you back for so much.
Mm-hmm.
B, I would be terrified because who knows what you would say.
I'd be very.
I'm going with
I'd be a very good interview. I
don't know.
often practice in the mirror. I would avoid people like Genghis Khan, just because you never know what the wrong answer might be, and he might just kill you in the interview.
And would you also be afraid of Genghis Khan?
Hey, she just took him
Wow.
out.
Slice
You know what?
it.
Yes, indeed.
Slice.
Somebody's a little upset tonight. All right.
Oh, this is me happy.
Ellen DeGeneres has interviewed several U.S. presidents, but she won't sit down with President Trump. You'll hear why next.
Talk show hosts would jump at the opportunity to interview the President of the United States, but not Ellen DeGeneres. She has no interest in ever booking a one-on-one with President Trump.
I have not spoken to him since he's run for president or become president.
Would you like him to come on the show?
No.
Why not? Why wouldn't someone like you like to sit down opposite the President of the United States?
Because I'm not going to change his mind. He's against everything that I stand for. We need to look at someone else who looks different than us and believes in something that we don't believe in, and still accept them and still let them have their rights.
So guys, I mean, what's the problem? Ellen is not a journalist. As far as I know, she's never made any claims to journalistic integrity. She has an entertainment show. Why can't she interview or not interview whoever she wants? What do
That's
you
not the
think?
question.
We don't care
That's
if
not the
she
question.
does.
The question is, it's a kind of moral cowardice. The applause is the answer to her question. When she said no, she got the applause, which means that if she had said yes, she would have upset the people that already agree with her. She doesn't want to upset the people that agree with her.
Right.
And she's
So you
turning down.
think it's about her audience? She's just kind of
And her friends,
galvanizing
and the people, and also she might even be jealous because he did it and she didn't. He ran and won, and she maybe thinks, I could have done that. There are a lot of people in entertainment who are saying that, who said, I could have done it. If he did it, I could have done it. She's probably just kicking herself.
I mean, isn't that a little bit kind of psychologically a little far-fetched?
Why not? I am far-fetched.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just, it's a little
I am
bit
100%
psychoanalysis.
right. I'm 100% right.
All right, what do you guys think?
He's right. He's right. I mean, what am
That
I
she
going to
should
do? Like,
interview
oh,
him.
Alan, you're so brave. Wow, how so awesome. She just didn't want to offend the people that she likes, that she hangs out with and socializing. This is just typical PC nonsense. And then she got the expected laugh track, clapping applause from the
And
audience.
what's he against that she's, what's he against? She
By
didn't-
the way, he's not against gay marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, so what are everything she stands for? Like, rights for gays and lesbians and bisexuals and transgenders and the questioning community? He's not against that.
But don't you think her audience and her friends and the whole Hollywood community would then prefer to have him have him on the show, and then she can grill him?
Well, you know what happened?
He wants education.
He went on Fallon's show, and I think Fallon tousled his hair,
right, yeah.
and it, quote, humanized Trump. And everybody hated that because you don't want to
Exactly, you're right.
humanize him.
Yep.
And you know what? Trump's not coming on Ellen, so it's easy for her to say, yeah, come on, go for it. Go for it. It's all real.
I can only imagine what Stephen Colbert's thinking when he's watching that. Is he ever going to have Trump on his show?
Is he still going to have a show?
I don't
Because he
think so.
has zero class and he's also not funny and he's desperate in
let
third
me tell
place.
you something. His numbers, his
Loser.
ratings have jumped up as he's become the anti-Trump voice at
Well,
night
because
and
he's
made him
just-
competitive.
Yeah, because he
And
takes
that's the-
cheap shots that
I
are
don't
not
know.
appropriate
I
for
didn't
television.
I
His
didn't like
conduct
some
is
of the language
unbecoming.
in there. I got myself in trouble for asking somebody,
Okay.
what did he say? I couldn't believe it. But anyway, I just think that everybody in American media these days plays to some niche, and Ellen's niche clearly is not pro-Trump.
So then stick with your niche and then call it a day.
Safe
But
spaces.
But then you get criticized for
Might be-
sticking to your niche, because then that means that we're not talking to each other.
you never
We're not-
stick to your niche.
I
You're
don't.
always expanding.
And the
I'm a
LGBT
mess.
community
I'm
is
a
very
human
upset
mess.
with Colbert.
All right,
as well.
stick with us. One more thing's coming up next.
For one more thing. Hello, over here.
All right. So back in November, Stephen Hawkins, the
What is
genius,
going on?
the physicist, said that we had about 1,000 years left to live on this planet. But guess what? He's recalculated now. He says only 100 years to find another planet for the human race to go to. He cites climate change, asteroid strikes, epidemics, putting us at risk for mass extinction. And it gets
ISIS.
worse. Get this, Gregory, it gets worse because we're going to need artificial intelligence to settle another planet. But he says the artificial intelligence may kill us first.
He's right.
I want to go home, Greg. Help me.
He's right,
Help
though.
me.
It's not about any of the. It's all about artificial intelligence.
And the robots.
No, non-thinking consciousness is going to destroy us. But anyway, I'll be talking about that tomorrow on the Greg Gutfeld show. I have Andrew Schultz, Amy Holmes. We're actually going to be talking about Stephen Hawking, artificial intelligence, and why that's going to destroy the Earth. But more important,
Okay, beautiful mind.
You're such a
Greg's Endangered Crown Lemur News. Since 1989, the one-stop source for all your endangered crown lemur news needs. This is in Chicago's Lincoln Primate House. So take a look at this little doll. Just born, baby little lemur. See where he is? He's in the mother. He's being held onto in the mother. You can't see it. You know the mother's name is... The mother's... There it is. The mother's name is
You can't
Tucker.
see it. Oh, Carlson. Aw.
Isn't that funny? Mother Tucker. That's her name.
Could
What?
you repeat that for
What's
the
so
audience?
funny?
No.
What is? I don't understand you. God, you people, get your minds out of the gutter.
That's what I said.
Oh, you're so innocent, Greg. You are charming little unicorn boy. All right. And in other Kentucky Derby news, yes, everyone's very excited about that. You saw all the hats on Fox
Horses.
today. Horses, yes, galloping creatures with no horns out of their head, Greg. So 20 horses compete in the Kentucky Derby, and it is which is a larger field size than most of the races. Now, on average, 8 horses race against one another. However, in this one of the most talked about horses is Patch, the one-eyed horse. He lost his eye to an ulcer that never healed, and he came out of his stall one morning with a swollen and tearing eye. So sadly, they had to remove it. But he's the underdog here. I think we should root for him. 30-1 shot.
All right. I'm going to be at the Derby tomorrow. I might
Just
put some
so.
money on Patch. So a lot of people say I look like this guy
David
right here.
Schwimmer.
Yes.
Well, because you do.
Okay, so not only do I look like this guy, I think I speak like him too. Roll the tape. And what they need to do is take some stories, but then pivot and say, this is what our new plan will do.
Here we go. Pivot. Pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot. Pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot.
Shut up. Shut up. Shut up.
My show's on tomorrow night, too.
Did you just boomerang yourself? That
I
was
did.
hot. All right, never miss an
Go,
episode
Julian.
5. Don't forget to stay for DVRs. Have a great weekend, everyone. Hannity next.